There have been moments in history where conflict and hardship have radically redefined what we consider normal. The Vietnam War was one such time, a period marked by chaos, fear, and survival. From unconventional warfare tactics to the widespread use of controversial chemicals, the Vietnam War unfolded in ways that challenged our modern understanding of war. So join us as we uncover some of the unsettling realities that were considered normal during the Vietnam War. Number 5. The use of napalm bombs. During the Vietnam War, one of the most infamous and devastating weapons used was napalm, a jelly-like substance made from gasoline. What made napalm so terrifying was not just its immediate lethality, but also the horrific injuries it caused to survivors. It sticks to the skin and can burn intensely for up to 10 minutes, leaving its victims with life-altering wounds. Napalm became a chilling symbol of the brutality of the Vietnam War. Both U.S. and South Vietnamese forces extensively employed it due to its effectiveness in clearing vegetation, destroying enemy bunkers, and cutting off supply routes. When dropped from planes, napalm bombs exploded into fireballs that generated intense heat waves capable of incinerating everything within their reach. The use of napalm inflicted untold suffering on the Vietnamese population, affecting civilians and soldiers alike. Its victims endured ghastly injuries, severe burns, asphyxiation, and long-term health problems. The indiscriminate nature of napalm's use meant that civilians often bore the brunt of its devastation. Napalm's impact on civilians became one of the defining images of the Vietnam War, especially after the widely circulated photograph of the napalm girls shocked the world. If you found the devastating effects of napalm horrifying, imagine the broader impact of Agent Orange on both soldiers and civilians during the Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, the United States used a biological warfare program that had devastating effects on the country and its future generations. The communist guerrillas, known as the Viet Cong, used the dense jungle to hide and launch surprise attacks on U.S. troops. To counter this, the U.S. resorted to a powerful chemical called Agent Orange, a herbicide and defoliant, to destroy the jungle and deprive the Viet Cong of their cover. Agent Orange was not the only chemical used. There were others like Agent Green, Purple, White, and Blue. However, Agent Orange was the most potent and destructive. It got its name from the orange-striped barrels it was transported in. The U.S. military sprayed nearly 80 million liters of Agent Orange over Vietnam, devastating the country's forest and wildlife. In addition to targeting the jungle, Agent Orange was used to destroy the crops of Vietnamese farmers, many of whom supported or sheltered the Viet Cong. The chemical had catastrophic effects on the land and the people. More than 3 million people were affected, including both Vietnamese civilians and U.S. soldiers. Those exposed to Agent Orange suffered from severe health issues, such as skin rashes, diabetes, prostate cancer, and leukemia. The use of Agent Orange sparked significant controversy, leading the U.S. government to provide financial aid and pensions to war veterans who had handled the chemical and suffered health problems as a result. The impact of Agent Orange didn't end with the war. It continued to affect the region for decades. Hundreds of thousands of babies were born with genetic defects due to their parents' exposure to the chemical. Even today, Vietnam continues to grapple with the lingering effects of Agent Orange. The land remains contaminated, and the population still faces health challenges linked to the poison. The aftermath of the chemical warfare has left a lasting scar on the country, impacting both the environment and the health of its people. Number 3. Assassinations and intelligence. The Phoenix program, launched by the United States during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1975, aimed to dismantle and neutralize the Viet Cong infrastructure in South Vietnam. It was a controversial counterinsurgency initiative that has since become a deeply contentious part of the war's history. The program's primary objective was to identify, capture, or eliminate Viet Cong operatives, sympathizers, and leaders through an aggressive intelligence and assassination campaign. Under the Phoenix program, a wide array of tactics was employed, including interrogations, targeted assassinations, mass arrest, and detention in interrogation centers. Informants were crucial to its operations, recruited from local communities and incentivized to provide intelligence that could lead to the capture or elimination of Viet Cong members. This network of informants played a pivotal role in identifying targets for arrest or assassination. However, the program operated under a cloud of secrecy, with its activities often conducted covertly. This clandestine nature raised significant concerns about due process, human rights violations, and the potential for abuse. Critics of the Phoenix program argue that it led to the arbitrary detention, torture, and mistreatment of innocent civilians. Entire villages suspected of supporting the Viet Cong were sometimes destroyed as part of its operations, further fueling criticism and controversy. The Phoenix program's effectiveness remains a topic of debate. While proponents argue it disrupted Viet Cong operations, detractors point to its ethical and moral implications, questioning whether the ends justified the means. But wait, there's more. Number 2. The tiger cages. The use of tiger cages during the Vietnam War highlights the extreme and cruel treatment of prisoners. These notorious structures were essentially outdoor cells built by the South Vietnamese government to imprison political detainees, many of whom were suspected of supporting the Viet Cong. The world first became aware of these cages in 1970, revealing a shocking and dark aspect of the conflict that had been hidden from the global community. These cages were typically made from barbed wire and cement, and they were often too small for a person to either stand up straight or lie down fully. This meant that prisoners had to huddle in cramped, uncomfortable positions, exposed to the harsh weather conditions. They endured relentless physical and psychological abuse, with guards regularly tormenting them. The conditions inside the tiger cages were appalling. The cells were overcrowded and lacked basic sanitation, leading to rampant disease and severe malnutrition. Prisoners were often left without adequate food, water, or medical care, which only worsened their suffering. The stench of decay and the cries of the imprisoned created an atmosphere of despair and terror that was unimaginable to those who were not forced to endure it. When the international community learned about these cages, it sparked widespread outrage and condemnation. Human rights organizations, governments, and the general public around the world were horrified by the inhumane treatment that had been meted out to the prisoners. The revelation of the tiger cages exposed the brutal reality of the Vietnam War's darker side, prompting calls for justice and accountability. The discovery of these cages not only shocked the world, but also brought to light the desperate plight of countless Vietnamese who had been imprisoned without trial or proper cause. Number 1. The Children of the Dust. When the United States joined the Vietnam War, it sent thousands of soldiers to fight. These soldiers often interacted closely with the local Vietnamese population. As a result, many children were born from relationships between American soldiers and Vietnamese women. Some of these relationships were genuine and based on love, but many others were exploitative or abusive. Vietnamese society gave these children a harsh nickname, Children of the Dust, treating them as outcasts because they were seen as descendants of the invaders. This stigma led to significant discrimination. Many of these children were abandoned by their mothers, who did not want to face the shame of raising a child fathered by an American soldier. These abandoned children often ended up in orphanages, and many became homeless or were forced to beg for survival. The discrimination against these children was so intense that in 1975, the Viet Cong declared that anyone with American blood would be killed. This severe threat was one of the reasons behind the U.S. government's decision to launch Operation Baby Lift, a mission that evacuated over 3,000 babies from South Vietnam to safety in the United States and other countries. Even today, the Children of the Dust face prejudice and are often treated with disdain by their fellow Vietnamese. They are still viewed with suspicion and contempt, bearing the burdens of their mixed heritage.